The courtroom was so quiet that you could hear the clock ticking. Little Amara sat on the stand, her small feet barely reaching the edge of the chair. She clutched the stuffed bunny she brought with her, holding it tightly, as if it could protect her from what she was about to do. Her big brown eyes filled with tears as she looked at the judge. "She hit him," Amara said softly, her voice shaking. "Mama hit him." Gasps echoed around the room. Her mother, Alicia, sat frozen at the defendant's table. Tears streamed down her face as her little girl revealed the truth she had begged her not to tell. Amara's world had always been her mama. She called her Mama Sunshine because her laughter filled their tiny house like warm light. But everything changed the day Mr. Peterson moved in next door. He was an older white man with a loud voice and a mean look in his eyes. From the first day, he made it clear they weren't welcome. "You don't belong here," he sneered at them one afternoon, standing on his porch. "Go back to where you came from." Alicia had ignored him at first. She told Amara to do the same. "People like him want to make you feel small," she said. "But you are not small, baby. You are mighty." But it got worse. Mr. Peterson started yelling at them every time they stepped outside. He called Alicia terrible names. Once, when Amara accidentally rode her bike onto his driveway, he shoved her off it, leaving a scrape on her knee. "Next time I'll call the cops on you," Amara cried all night, while her mama cleaned her wound and whispered, "It's gonna be okay, babe." But it wasn't okay. One night, Amara woke up to the sound of shouting. She peeked out the window and saw her mama standing face to face with Mr. Peterson. He was yelling and pointing his finger at her chest. "You think you can talk back to me?" he shouted. "You people don't know your place." Alicia tried to walk away, but he grabbed her arm. That's when it happened. Amara saw her mama pick up a glass bottle from the porch and swing it. The bottle shattered against his head, and Mr. Peterson fell to the ground, blood pooling around. "Mama," Amara screamed, running outside. Her mother dropped the broken bottle and pulled Amara into her arms. "Go back inside, baby," she whispered. "Go inside and lock the door." Now, in the courtroom, Amara's words were the final blow. Everyone had seen Mr. Peterson's injuries, but nobody had witnessed the fight except for her. Alicia had pleaded not guilty, saying it was self-defense. But without proof, her fate depended on Amara's testimony. The judge leaned forward. "Amara, can you tell us why your mama hit Mr. Peterson?" Amara looked down at her bunny, stroking its ear. She was scared. She didn't want her mama to go away. But she also knew her mama always told her to tell the truth no matter what. "He was hurting her," Amara whispered. He grabbed her arm and she told him to let go, but he didn't. She looked so scared. He was yelling and wouldn't stop. That's why she hit him. The prosecutor stood up, his voice cold. "Amara, did your mother ever tell you to say that?" Amara shook her head fiercely. "No," Mama said, to tell the truth. "She always says that. And it's true, he was mean to us. He didn't like us 'cause we're black." The room went silent again. The judge rubbed his temples, looking at Alicia. Her head was bowed, tears dripping onto the table. The prosecutor pressed on, but Amara didn't waver. She told the story exactly as she remembered. She spoke about the names Mr. Peterson called them, how he shoved her, and how scared her mama had been that night. Finally, it was over. The judge called a recess, and Amara was taken back to a waiting room. Her mama wasn't allowed to come with. She sat alone, clutching her bunny, feeling like her world was breaking. A week later, they were back in court. The judge's face was heavy as he read the "Alicia Brown, this court finds you not guilty on the charges of assault with intent to harm. Evidence supports that you acted in self-defense." Amara didn't understand all the words, but when she saw her mama cry and smile at the same time, she knew it was good news. She ran to her and Alicia scooped her up in a tight hug. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered, shoving microphones in their faces. A woman knelt down to Amara's level asking, "How does it feel to save your mom?" Amara didn't know what to say. She just held her mama's hand and said, "I just told the truth." But even as they walked away, Alicia knew the battle wasn't over. People would still judge her. They would whisper and point, calling her a violent black woman without knowing the truth. She squeezed Amara's hand, grateful for her daughter's courage. "You're my sunshine, Mama," Amara said softly. "No, Bobby. Alicia replied. "Yuri min." Life after the trial was not easy. Elisha and Amara returned to their small house, but it no longer felt like home. The neighbors whispered as they walked by, some looking at them with pity, others with disdain. Mr. Peterson had moved away, but his shadow lingered. The broken window he had thrown rocks at was still taped up. The bike Amara had left on his driveway sat rusting in the backyard, untouched since that terrible night. Alicia tried to keep things normal for Amara. She got up early to make pancakes shaped like hearts and stars, just like she used to. She braided Amara's hair while humming the same old song. But the laughter they once shared didn't come as easily. Amara, too, had changed. She didn't play outside anymore. Her teacher told Elisha that Amara had started drawing pictures of people with big, angry faces. At night, Amara would sometimes crawl into her mama's bed, clutching her butt. "Are they going to take you away, Mama?" she would ask, her voice trembling. "No, baby," Elisha would whisper, holding her close. "Nobody's taking me away." But deep down, Alicia couldn't shake the fear that something would happen, that someone would come knocking on their door ready to punish her for defending herself and her child. One afternoon, Amara came home from school with a paper in her hand. "Mama, I drew this for you," she said, handing it over. Elisha looked at the picture. It showed two figures holding hands under a big yellow sun. One figure had brown braids like hers, the other had bunny ears. They were surrounded by flowers and smiling faces. "It's beautiful, baby," Elisha said, her voice catching in her throat. "What's the sun for?" Amara shrugged. "It's you. You said I am your sunshine, but I think you are mine too. We're each other's sunshine." Alicia hugged her tightly, tears streaming down her face. "We are, baby, we are." As time passed, Elisha decided they couldn't live in fear forever. She started attending a local support group for Black women who had faced similar struggles. They shared stories of discrimination, of fighting back, of protecting their families. Alicia realized she wasn't alone. One evening, Amara sat in the corner of the community center while her mama spoke to the group. She listened as her mama's voice grew stronger, more confident. "I didn't ask to be a hero," Elisha said. "I just did what I had to do to keep my baby safe. And I'd do it again, no matter what anyone said." The women in the group nodded, their eyes shining with understanding. For the first time in a long while, Alicia felt like she belonged somewhere. Amara watched her mama with pride. She didn't understand everything the grown-ups were saying, but she knew her mama was brave. She decided she wanted to be brave too. The next day at school, during show and tell, Amara stood up in front of the class. She held up the picture she had drawn for her mom. "This is my mama," she said. "She's my sunshine. She's brave and she always tells the truth." Some kids giggled, but Amara didn't care. She looked at her teacher, who smiled and nodded, and she felt a little strong. When she got home, she told her mama what she had done. "You were right," she said. "Telling the truth makes you strong." Elisha knelt down and kissed her forehead. "It sure does, baby. And you are the strongest little girl I know." Years later, when Amara was grown, she would look back on that time and realize it shaped who she was. Her mama's courage taught her to stand up for herself and for others. She went on to become a lawyer, fighting for people who didn't have a voice, just like her mama had fought for her. On her graduation day, she gave her mama a framed copy of that old drawing, the one with the sunshine and the flower. "Thank you, Mama," Amara said, "for being my sunshine." Alicia hugged her tightly, her heart full of pride. "And thank you, baby, for being mine." Elisha's house, the small one where so much had happened, became a place of pride over the years. She never moved away, despite the whispers and the looks from the neighbors. The memories there were heavy, but they were also proof of her resilience. Amara often visited as an adult, bringing her own children. They loved sitting at the kitchen table while their grandma made pancakes in the shape of hearts and stars. Alicia would tell them stories about when their mama was little, about her bravery and the time she saved their family. "But how did Mommy save you, Grandma?" her youngest grandchild Layla asked one day, her wide eyes full of wonder. Alicia smiled softly. "She told the truth when it mattered the most, even though it was scary. And because of her, we got a second chance." "Is that why Mommy's a lawyer now?" Layla asked. "That's part of it," Alicia said. "But mostly, it's because your mama knows how important it is to stand up for what's right, no matter how hard it is." Amara, standing by the doorway, watched her children listen to their grandmother with rapt attention. higher strength. Together, we can explore stories of resilience, justice, and the moments that make a difference. Your support helps amplify voices that need to be heard, so let's grow this community of changemakers. Click subscribe now, and let's continue this journey together. She thought back to that courtroom, to the moment she told the truth, even though it felt like the whole world was against her. She hadn't fully understood it then, but her words had changed everything. They had given her mama a chance to live, to heal, to grow. Years later, when Alicia passed away peacefully in her sleep, the entire neighborhood came out to honor her. People who had once avoided her house now brought flowers and shared stories about her kindness and strength. Many of them talked about how they had judged her unfairly back then, how they hadn't understood what she was going through. At the funeral, Amara spoke. She stood in front of a packed church, holding the same stuffed bunny she had clung to as a little girl in the courtroom. Her voice shook as she began. My mama was the strongest person I've ever known. She taught me how to love, how to fight, and how to stand tall when the world tries to knock you down. She didn't just survive, she thrived. And because of her, I am here today, doing my best to follow in her footsteps. She paused, looking out at the faces in the crowd. Some of them were familiar, others were strangers, but they all shared one thing: they had been touched by her mama's story. Here is a saying my mama loved, Amara continued. The truth sets you free. That's what she believed, and that's what she taught me. She didn't just tell me, I saw her live it. Amara looked down at her children, who sat in the front row holding hands. And now, I want to pass that lesson on to my babies, just like she passed it on to me. After the funeral, Amara walked through the old neighborhood, remembering the challenges they had faced there. She stopped in front of her childhood home, now quiet and still. She looked up at the porch where her mama had stood her ground so many years ago. A new family lived there now, their laughter spilling out into the yard. A little girl, about the same age Amara had been back then, waved to her from the porch. Amara smiled and waved back. As she turned to leave, she whispered under her breath, "Thank you, Mama, for everything." The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the street. Amara felt its warmth on her face and thought of her mama's words, "We're each other's sunshine." And in that moment, she knew it was true. Amara found herself visiting her childhood neighborhood more often after her mother's passing. It wasn't just the nostalgia that drew her back, it was the sense of unfinished business. The whispers of the past still lingered, but instead of resentment, they now fueled her determination to honor her mother's legacy. One day, Amara decided to take her children with her. They walked along the familiar streets, and Amara told them stories about her childhood. She pointed out the cracked sidewalk where she used to hopscotch, the corner store where she and her mama bought popsicles, and the small community center that had become a refuge for her mother after the trial. "This is where Grandma found her strength," Amara said, stopping in front of the old community center. She met other women here who understood her struggles. They helped her, and she helped them. The center looked run down now, its paint peeling and its doors locked. A "for sale" sign hung crookedly on the fence. Seeing it in such a state stirred something in Amara. "Mommy, why does it look so sad?" Layla asked, tilting her head. Amara knelt down to her daughter's level. "Sometimes, places that help people get forgotten," she explained. "But we can change that." Over the next few weeks, Amara couldn't shake the image of the empty community center. She remembered how much it had meant to her mother and the other women who had gathered there. It wasn't just a building, it was a lifeline. One evening, after tucking her kids into bed, Amara sat down with her husband. "I want to buy the community center," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. Her husband raised an eyebrow. "That's a big commitment, Amara. Are you sure?" "I am," she said. "It's what my mama would have wanted. That place gave her hope when she needed it most. I want to give that hope to others." The process wasn't easy, but Amara was used to fighting for what she believed in. She reached out to local organizations, applied for grants, and rallied community members to support her vision. Slowly but surely, she raised enough money to purchase the building. The day the keys were handed to her, Amara stood on the steps of the center with her children and husband by her side. She looked at the old, weathered sign that still read Sunrise Community Center. A tear slipped down her cheek as she whispered, "Mama, this is for you." Renovations took months, but Amara poured her heart into every detail. She turned the space into a welcoming haven for families, women, and children in need. There was a playroom for kids, a kitchen for shared meals, and meeting rooms for support groups. She named the main hall after her mother, the Elisha Brown Courage Room. When the center reopened, the entire neighborhood turned out for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Amara stood at the front, her children clutching her hands as she addressed the crowd. "This center is more than just a building," she said. "It's a reminder that even in our darkest moments, we can find light. My mama taught me that truth and love can change lives." The crowd erupted in applause as Amara cut the ribbon, officially reopening the Sunrise Community Center. People poured inside, exploring the space and sharing stories. One older woman approached Amara with tears in her eyes. "I knew your mama," she said. "She was a fighter. She'd be so proud of you." "Thank you," Amara replied, her voice thick with emotion. "She taught me everything I know." In the months that followed, the center became a beacon of hope in the neighborhood. Families found support, children laughed and played, and women shared their stories in the Courage Room. Amara knew her mama's spirit was alive in every corner of the building. One evening, as the sun set over the neighborhood, Amara sat on the steps of the center with her children. Layla leaned against her, looking up at the golden sky. "Mommy, do you think Grandma can see us?" she asked. Amara smiled, wrapping an arm around her daughter. "I know she can, and I know she's smiling." As the last rays of sunlight bathed the center in a warm glow, Amara felt her mother's presence. The warmth of her sunshine was still there, lighting the way forward. As the Sunrise Community Center thrived, Amara found herself mentoring others who reminded her of her mother women and families who felt beaten down by life but still held a spark of hope. She listened to their stories, offering guidance and encouragement, just as her mother had done for her. The center became a second home not only for them but also for her family. Her children grew up seeing the impact of their mother's work. Layla, now a teenager, often volunteered at the center after school, helping with the children's activities. She loved hearing the women's stories of strength and resilience. One afternoon, as she painted a mural on one of the walls, she turned to her mother. "Mom, did Grandma ever feel scared when she stood up for herself?" Layla asked. "All the time," Amara said, kneeling beside her daughter. "But she did it anyway. Being brave doesn't mean you are not scared, it means you don't let the fear stop you." Layla nodded thoughtfully and went back to painting. The mural she was creating featured a giant sun surrounded by handprints of different colors and sizes, symbolizing the diverse community the center served. One evening, the center hosted an event called Stories of Strength. Women from the neighborhood shared their journey stories of overcoming poverty, prejudice, and personal struggles. Amara was one of the last to speak. Standing at the podium in the Elisha Brown Courage Room, she held the stuffed bunny she had clung to during the trial so many years ago. It was worn and faded, but it remained a powerful symbol of her journey. "I want to tell you about a little girl who was terrified, but knew she had to speak the truth," Amara began. She didn't understand how her words would change her life, or her mother's life, but she knew that the truth mattered. She paused, looking around the room. "That little girl was me, and my mother, Elisha Brown, was the bravest person I've ever known. She didn't just survive, she thrived. She showed me that even when the world tries to make you small, you can stand tall, and that's why this center exists today." As she finished, the room erupted into applause. Amara looked at Layla and her other children sitting in the front row, their faces beaming with pride. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing her mother's legacy was not just alive but growing. In the years that followed, Layla took on more responsibilities at the center, eventually stepping into a leadership role alongside her mother. She had inherited her grandmother's strength and her mother's determination. The center continued to expand, offering legal aid, educational programs, and mental health services. One day, As Layla led a workshop for young girls, she shared her own story. My grandma used to tell my mom that they were each other's sunshine, she said. And now, I see that sunshine in all of you. No matter what you are going through, you have the power to shine. The girls listened intently, their faces lighting up with hope. Layla handed each of them a small toquina pin shaped like a sun. Wear this to remind yourself that you are strong, and you are never alone, she said. When Amara eventually retired, she passed the torch to Layla, confident that the center was in good hands. Layla renamed the annual Stories of Strength event to the Sunshine Celebration in honor of her grandmother and the light she had brought to their lives. On the center's 20th anniversary, the family gathered on its steps for a photo. The mural Layla had painted as a teenager was still there, brighter than ever, with new handprints added every year. Amara held the framed drawing she had given her mother on her graduation day, the one with the sun, the flowers, and the two figures holding hands. She smiled as she looked at her children and grandchildren. "Grandma would be so proud of us," Layla said, squeezing her mother's hand. Amara nodded, her heart full. "She's not just proud, baby. She's here with us in everything we do. Her light is in all of us." As the camera clicked, the family stood together, united by love, resilience, and the sunshine that continued to guide their way forward. The Sunrise Community Center became more than just a beacon for the neighborhood. It was a symbol of change and resilience. People came from other towns to learn from its programs and replicate its model. Layla, now the director, often spoke at conferences, sharing the story of her grandmother's courage, her mother's determination, and her own commitment to carrying their legacy forward. Amara, though retired, was still a constant presence at the center. She would sit in the Courage Room, now adorned with pictures of her mother, herself, and Layla watching the community grow. One day, Layla approached her with an idea. "Mom," she said, sitting beside her, "I've been thinking we should put up a permanent memorial for Grandma here. Something that tells her story, so everyone who walks through these doors knows why this place exists." Amara smiled, her eyes welling with tears. "I think that's a beautiful idea." The unveiling of the memorial became a community-wide event. The centerpiece was a bronze plaque mounted on a stone pedestal in the courtyard. It featured an engraving of Elisha Brown's face, surrounded by rays of sunshine. Beneath her image was an inscription. "When the world tried to silence her, she spoke the truth. When it tried to break her, she stood tall. Her strength ignited a legacy of hope and justice that will shine for generations." Beside the plaque stood a small garden filled with vibrant flowers, roses, daisies, and sunflowers, all planted by the community members who had been touched by the center's work. At the ceremony, Amara spoke first, her voice steady but emotional. "This is more than a memorial for my mother," she said. "It's a reminder of what she taught us, that our voices matter, that our truth matters, and that even in the face of darkness we can create light." Layla spoke next, her voice full of pride and conviction. "My grandmother didn't just change our family's life, she changed this community. And her light didn't stop with her. It's in all of us now, pushing us to be brave, to be kind, and to fight for what's right." As the ribbon was cut, the crowd erupted in applause. People approached the memorial, reading the inscription, leaving flowers, and reflecting on the impact of one woman's courage. In the following weeks, the memorial became a gathering place for the community. Families brought their children to learn about Elisha Brown's story. Teachers held lessons there about justice and resilience, and women found strength in her words. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Amara and Layla sat on a bench near the memorial. Amara's grandchildren played nearby, their laughter echoing through the courtyard. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" Layla asked, her voice soft. "Every day," Amara replied, gazing at the plaque. "I think about what Mama would say if she could see all this." Layla smiled. "She'd probably tell us we did good, but then remind us, here is still work to do." Amara chuckled. "You are right. She never stopped pushing us to be better." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn shades of pink and orange. The light of the setting sun reflected off the bronze plaque, making it glow. Layla took her mother's hand. "Thank you, Mom, for everything." Amara squeezed her daughter's hand, her heart full. No, baby, thank you. You are the reason this legacy will live on. As the last rays of sunlight faded, the garden lights flickered on, casting a soft glow over the memorial. The words etched in stone seemed to shimmer, a reminder that the truth once spoken could never be erased. And just like that, Alicia Brown's light continued to shine, guiding her family and the world toward a brighter future.